Welcome to Illuminati Silver's Inner Sanctum, where we tell you the truth about precious metals, economics, politics and banking. Today is Friday, the 9th of August 2019, and we're looking at an article written by Frank Stajano in Financial World, August-September edition, where he highlights the concerns the banks have with regards to competition with the retail sector should they decide or develop further their financial services operations. It's entitled Getting to the Ground Truth. Getting to the Ground Truth. Frank Stajano discusses the threat to banks if the internet giants begin to offer retail financial services and shows why the quality of customer data is so important. What hope do non-banks have of beating the banks at their own game? Don't the banks hold a strong advantage as incumbents? Is there anything that either party can do better than the other, and that competitors from the other camp cannot replicate? At last, this is being tested by the internet giants. We now see signs that Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Alibaba will offer the sort of retail financial services that have been the province of banks, such as retail loans, for one. Google Pay, for example, has partnered with 4 Indian banks to offer pre-approved instant loans, and it was recently reported to be planning to launch a cashback reward scheme to encourage use of Google Pay in India. One of the main strengths of the tech giants is their treasure trove of big data. The data they continuously collect about everything their users do online and increasingly offline, thanks to voice and image recognition and motion sensing technology. Despite banks having a statutory duty to know your customer, one might argue that the tech giants know their customer much better, especially if their algorithms have direct access to someone's emails, their location, their driving patterns, purchasing habits, circle of friends, and biological data such as heart rate and sleeping patterns. Unfettered access to this data is an exclusive advantage that banks are unable to replicate. Another big strength of the internet giants is their artificial intelligence machinery, both hardware and software. They do not have a monopoly on it, but they have by now some of the biggest and most powerful installations, partly because their very large, real-time data sets make them better able to train the machines, and partly because they have the resources to hire some of the best researchers in the world to continue to develop them. Competitors from the banking side will have a hard time matching their setup. Banks, on the other hand, although they hold much less data about their users, have information that is arguably much more relevant to the delicate task of correctly assessing credit risk. They know firsthand how much their users earn per month, how much they spend, whether they are ever in debt, and if so, how frequently, by how much and for how long, whether they save, and how much, whether they own their house, and so forth. Granted, a customer may have accounts with several banks, so the individual bank may not have access to the full picture. But that is the kind of information that banks, not tech giants, normally hold about their customers. Another important differentiator is that internet giants, which make money from selling highly targeted advertising space, have a natural business incentive to intrude on privacy that banks do not have. As the cynical but insightful saying about Google, Facebook, and their ilk goes, quote, "If you're not paying, You're not the customer, you're the product, unquote. Banks, in contrast, have another source of revenue, the interest they earn on the money you deposit with them, and the fees they may charge on your account, and therefore do not need to rely on monetizing your private data. Some commentators have argued that banks could turn this fact to their advantage by offering themselves as more reputable and less intrusive guardians of your private data. Is that viable as a business model for banks in competition with big tech? How sensitive the public is to privacy threats by corporations is a matter for debate. When surveyed about their feelings, most people say they highly value their privacy, but when offered a practical monetary choice through the kind of experiments favoured by behavioural economists, they seem happy to sell it off cheaply. Many will accept a loyalty card, which lets the store track their every purchase and link it to their named account in exchange for a discount that is usually smaller than 1%. Other examples abound. Many motorists enjoy the convenience of Google Maps at a marginal cost of £0, as opposed to a standalone sat-nav costing a couple of £100 or dollars, without concern for their location privacy, and for the fact that their smartphone now continuously relays to Google their position, their trips, their speed, ever gone above the limit on the motorway, or linked to their named account if they're logged in, or easily relinkable should Google wish to do so if they are not. So the fact that banks might in theory be better at storing the user's private data might not be a selling point that users care very much about, particularly as accepting the banks as the custodian of my private data would not in itself stop the internet giants from continuing to collect data about me at every interaction I have with them. What the public might think harder about is a straight financial argument. If the internet giant were able to offer a loan more cheaply than a bank, they might pay attention. In the competition between the two kinds of provider, the issue is not merely about the willingness of one party to make a lower profit in order to undercut the opponent. What matters, at least, as much, is which of the competitors is able to price the risk more accurately. Will it be the bank, which knows perhaps, or at least in part, the financial track record of the applicant, or will it be the internet giant, with access to applicants' data exhaust and with more powerful artificial intelligence machinery to mine predictions out of it? This is an interesting scenario, and it may be that the challengers end up having the edge on the incumbents. Better AI machinery and the wealth of hints present in the rail of data left behind by internet users might potentially produce more accurate risk assessments. There are already some firms that claim to do just that. But for this to happen, a crucial piece of the puzzle is ground truth. You may have the fanciest AI in the world, but it will not go very far without a solid foundation of ground truth. AI is at a peak in its periodic hype cycle. I get to read the applications of all the candidates who wish to study computer science at Trinity College, Cambridge, and this year at least 3 out of 4 applicants declared themselves very keen on machine learning, many of them having even already taken online courses on the subject before starting university. But despite all the semi-supervised learning and deep convolutional neural networks, no matter how many buzzwords you throw at the problem, you basically end up with some fancy maths that takes gigabytes of data in and spits out an answer, maybe even a correct answer, but cannot explain the reason why that ought to be the answer. Contrary to what the word intelligence might suggest, current AI is not able to explain its reasoning because it is not reasoning. It is fancy statistical tools that may get it right but cannot tell you why. And crucially, The extent to which it gets it right is directly related to the quality of the data used for the training. You start with cases that have already been classified correctly and train the machine with them. At the end of that process, the machine can classify new instances for you. In the case of loan applicants, the input would be all the information the loan issuer has access to before making a decision, whether it is the applicant's financial track record or their internet browsing history or whatever, and the output would be some measure of the likelihood that they will repay the loan in full by the deadline. Machine learning only works to the extent that you feed in a bunch of known good examples during the training phase. And where are the internet giants going to find this ground truth? They may have access to a lot of private information about hundreds of millions of potential applicants, but how do they know if they would repay or default? They probably do not know, unless they ask the banks. The banks know by having made those loans. Although they will not have had the same inputs as the tech giants when they made the decisions, it is the historical data of what happened at repayment time that is precious for training. I can easily imagine the internet companies attempting to buy such historical data from the banks and other lenders and then intersecting it with their own data about those same individuals to form a training corpus of, quote, this guy drives this, watches that, lives there, and repay it. That guy instead drives that, watches that, lives in this other place, and didn't repay, unquote. Some fintechs that use mobile data to credit score, such as Dept, trained their system with small loans. The historical financial data might be so valuable as ground truth to bootstrap the machine learning process that the internet giants might be willing even to buy established lenders wholesale just to get at it, maybe even throwing away the rest, if that is all they cared about. Because machine learning is currently at the peak of its hype cycle, many people are jumping on the bandwagon, and papers are being published that really should not be. I have seen researchers producing synthetic data because collecting actual data and classifying it manually is time-consuming and expensive, and applying their buzzword-laden neural networks to it. That may result in another publication, but is unlikely to produce useful results. As the old data processing proverb says, quote, garbage in, garbage out, unquote. If the AI-heavy and big data-heavy tech giants want to outperform the traditional lenders in pricing risk accurately, the first thing they need is ground truth. If banks see these giants coming to challenge their business, they must be aware that is what they are going to want to extract from them, and that they might be unstoppable once they get it. Disclaimer. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.